Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story TV and the Her Story podcast. This is your host, Gertrude Mache, here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. Today, I am graced with the presence of yet another amazing soul sister. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Thank you. What a beautiful introduction. I'm Miranda Murray. I'm based in Sydney in Australia. We're currently in week 5 of our lockdown here. So it's beautiful to be able to see your face through the lens of a camera. I am a women's empowerment and fertility coach, and I'm 47 years old. And I guess tell you about my story. Where do I start? It's so long. There's a book in there somewhere, but I guess I almost fell into what I'm doing really through my own life experiences. Our little girl, who is she's 3 going on 23 some days, but she's a 3-year-old, nearly 4, and she is the result of 11 IVFs. For me personally, 7 IVFs for my current husband and I, 4 IVFs for us and 7 in my previous marriage. Or as my husband likes to say, she's really just the result of the final one. She's not the result of all of them, but the path that I went on and we went on as a couple to come to this place of being parents is really what sparked me, I guess, into becoming a fertility coach in particular. But along the way, I don't have the golden ticket for all the answers in life. My first marriage fell apart after our first 7 IVFs, unfortunately. But what I did learn through that process, through seeing a life coach of my own, was the beauty and the power in having the right support networks around you, the people who are there to lift you up in times of challenge. And ultimately, I came out of my life coach sessions that had originally started with me taking a break from our IVF and really looking for some guidance around what I wanted to do for work. And I had thought at the time that might be down the path of counselling. And a few sessions into our coaching with this beautiful empowered woman herself, who was 10 years older than I was and had changed her career at my age, my marriage fell apart. And so for 6 months, it completely took a different focus as I navigated being 39 and going through a separation. And being left ultimately with no husband, no children, because I'd given up work to try and do our IVF and relieve some stress, and not knowing what I wanted to be when I grew up type thing. That's what it felt like, and 6 months later, as the fog had lifted and I came out the other side and I could see the light at the end of the tunnel, I went to a session with my life coach and I said, you know what, I actually think that I would like to be a life coach. And she said, oh, I could have told you that in the second session, but you had to get there yourself. And so, for her, she was a gift from whatever you might believe in, the universe, the heavens, synchronicity, serendipity, whatever it was. And she happened to be, as I said, 10 years older. She'd also gone through a divorce at my age. And so she was the perfect gift for me. And in turn, now I gift that to other women. There's been so many life lessons that I've learnt through my experience and perhaps from the University of Life, and then teamed with those learnings and also my formal qualifications, I now am so passionate about supporting and empowering women who are going through different challenges and different chapters in their own journey of womanhood, whether you're 20, 25, 35, whether you're trying to start a family, whether you're out the other end and your kids are flying the coop, whether you've got a change of career, and really just how do you maintain that strong sense of self through all of those challenges that we face as women and thrive, and come out the other side thriving, really knowing who you are and what your core values are and staying aligned to that in order to find your peaceful flow in life, whatever that looks like for you. And so that's, how I came to be doing what I'm doing.
An amazing story you went through. You have had challenge after challenge after challenge, for somebody who managed to have children very easily. I used to say that my husband used to sneeze and I would get pregnant. To hear what women actually go through and, trying to keep the relationship going while you're going through all of that as well is another challenge.
Yeah,
but it sounds to me like you're getting a mentor, getting a coach, getting somebody to be there by your side really helped you get through this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And perhaps for me it was too late for the first marriage. But and that's another whole podcast probably around how I also think those things were a blessing. They've added to the wisdom that I bring to everything that I do today with my work, to my life, to the way that I mother my daughter, to the kind of wife that I am, all of those things. So I don't even look back on a broken marriage as something that's disappointing or regretful. I just look at those things and reflect on them and bring them into the beauty and the richness and the messiness of life that has actually led me to where I am today. But certainly once I engaged that coach, who funnily enough was a teens and parent coach, so I wasn't even her niche. But she was a friend of a friend. We'd met at a wedding, and she said, "Oh, let's just have a session and see where it goes." And we clicked, and I'm so thankful. She was a pivotal catalyst for me for getting through the challenges I went through, and also for me wanting to be that person, that soft place for women to land for somebody else. And it might not necessarily be a coach. It could be a counselor, it might be a therapist, it might be your personal trainer, it might, it's a mentor, it's somebody, but it's really, I so strongly believe that part of thriving is there's such a thrown around word in the well-being space, but really working through things and coming out strong is to surround yourself with people who lift you up, and be fed positive feedback and thoughts, and have a place where you can express your emotions in a non-judgmental arena. I think that's that's not often, as much as we love our families or our friends, sometimes it needs to be somebody else.
It has to be something completely separate.
Yeah.
What was fascinating for me, when I started looking at your bio and the things that you're up to, I felt like I'd met a sister from another mother, because we are literally creating these women's circles and holding space for other women.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's important for women to share their stories, do you think?
Look, I think, traditionally, particularly if I keep reflecting back to the fertility space, there's still a stigma around that, and even with other challenges and chapters that we face, whether they're relationship breakdowns or the loss of a job through no choice of our own, or it's it's an infertility challenge not by choice, or it's miscarriage, or it's menopause, or whatever it is. I think somewhere over the years and over the centuries, we have somehow become less likely or less open to sharing that with other people. And I think social media has a lot to do with it, because we see these glamorous Insta, lives, which aren't always true. And we think everyone else has got it together and I don't, and it's just me. I better keep this to myself. How embarrassing. When in actual fact, a little bit of honesty and vulnerability goes a long way, because you quite often will see your sister from another mister, or whoever it might be, some other woman who the penny drops, or an aha moment comes, and the sigh of relief, particularly in a women's circle, where you can see the transformation happening before your eyes. And these women, they let out a sigh and they say, "Oh, I thought I was the only one, I've had a really shit week. My kids have been driving me nuts," or, I'm just not managing. I'm in my pajamas still," particularly during, the pandemic. The number of people who now are a little bit more comfortable in saying to their sisters, to their women folk, "Oh, I've been in a mum bun for 2 months. This is the best time I've actually brushed my hair," or, "I've got active wear down on the bottom, and I've got, my workout top." It's become a bit of a joke, but I think it's also allowed that space for us to show our real selves.
Yes. Yeah, you're so right.
There's so much power in that as women. You know,
Oh,
here
God.
in Australia, I think I was saying this to you the other day, that here in Australia, where I hold my women's circles in different times when we can meet face to face, and I say, you know, people have been doing this, and you would know this from your home country. People have been doing this for 60,000 years, you know, sitting in these circles.
Centuries. You're so right.
Men and women, but of course women are making, you know, sitting and sharing stories and sharing the truths and the challenges, the triumphs and the sadness and everything in between, and actually gaining that support from sharing it in a sacred space where what is said in circle stays in circle, and they can go away feeling a little bit less isolated and a little bit less alone, and, you know, a warm
lighter. And lighter.
It's lighter. Lift it up. Yeah.
I love that. Now, the other fascinating thing about you and your life and just your attitude to life is you have this tenacity, this no give up mentality. You know, you had a second chance in life, and when you told me your how you met your second husband, it just warmed my heart. Tell us a little bit about how that happened.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I think, you know, thank you for that. That's a massive compliment. I think part of it is a little bit of stubbornness, you know, to, not let life get the better of me. But also, as I shared the other day, part of it is, you know, I lost my mum when I was 6. And I do think that when you go through some kind of childhood trauma, it changes you. And, you know, perhaps I was young enough. I even see the differences between how I coped and how my brother coped as an 8-year-old. And I think as a 6-year-old, I perhaps was lucky, if you can call it that, in that I hadn't formed the mental models around what was going on so much. And so what I did take out of it was an immense amount of resilience, you know, and I could move through that and through life having already a really deeply ingrained empathy for other people, and realizing that no matter what is happening in other people's lives, I think on some level, we all experience some level of trauma, and that trauma is personal to each of us. And what is meaningful to you is perhaps different for me, and it's different from the next person. And so I think that was part of it. I think, you know, the pragmatism that I have for life is just something that's ingrained from a young child, through my own experiences from back then. It's also because laughter and joy and fun is one of my core values. So even in the depths of despair, I was still laughing at myself, you know, and I felt like if I couldn't laugh at myself, then some days the alternative was to be on curled up in a ball crying, and I chose to laugh and to express emotions that way. Don't get me wrong, there was plenty of tears at times through divorce and IVF, you know, non-viable treatments, and dancing around my, you know, lounge and Bridget Jones style in my undies, drinking a glass of wine and yelling a bit of F you to the universe. There was certainly those kind of times as well. And I think they all go hand in hand with the healing process. What you're referring to is when I was coming out and just about to sign off on my divorce, the separation had, you know, come and gone. I'd been through the stages of hitting the dance floors with my girlfriends who were 10 years younger and telling me to get out there and, you know, drop down on the dance floor and all of those kind of things. And they were my wing women. And I'd come out to the other side where I was like, right, I've survived this. I'm thriving. I've got a lot to go, but I'm still here. And I thought, right, you know, I may not be a mum, but there are ways that I can still tick my maternal nurturing need. You know, I had this mothering instinct. I still do now, you know, even though I'm old and, you know, and won't be having another baby through my loins. But, you know, I had this real need to still share my love for kids and to somehow mother. And I decided that I was going to sponsor an underprivileged child somewhere in the world. I just knew I was going to do it. I didn't know who that would be. And I went back to New Zealand, where I'm from, licking my wounds from my impending divorce, and stayed with one of my best girlfriends who's in her 60s. And I told her of my plans. I said, I'm going to sponsor a child. And my ex-husband had said, oh, don't do that, you know, when we were married, because the money goes to admin. And I was in this real place, empowered place already of, I am woman, hear me roar, and I'll spend my money where I like.
Yes.
And she told me a story. She'd seen a keynote speaker, Peter Baines, who now has an Order of Australia medal here in Australia, and he was part of the forensic detective cleanup of the 2004 tsunami in Thailand. And he was there and he witnessed 5,000 bodies in the temple grounds as they were trying to find the families. And he came home a changed man. And he started his charity called Hands Across the Water, based here in Sydney, actually. And I was living in Perth still. And my girlfriend, Carol, said, you know, it's the perfect charity for you. It's in Australia, so you'll go back home and it's just right there. And anyway, I watched, looked through the footage and read up around the Hands Across the Water story, and I was hooked. And so right that day, I sponsored a child and I said, I'm in. And she said, they also do this amazing fundraising adventure. It's riding a bike, a push bike, 800 kilometers in 8 days through Thailand.
Oh, my God.
We have to raise $10,000 each to do it. Shall we do it? And I thought she'd lost her marbles. Here she was in her early 60s. She was recovering from a really bad broken leg, and she needed something to get her through. She needed to get her confidence back. Here I was, freshly licking my wounds from my marriage breakup and really looking for a way forward for that year. I'd been through a certain stage of the healing, and I was at a place where I was ready to regain perspective, to pay it forward and to give back. And so over several good bottles of Kiwi Sauv Blanc wine, we got Dutch courage and we signed up. And then we were like, now what? And so off I went back to Perth after the Christmas holidays, and I announced to the world my plans. Everyone thought I'd lost my mind. You're about to turn 40 and you're having a midlife crisis. Your marriage is broken up, and what are you doing? I hadn't been on a bike since high school. I had to buy a bike. Luckily, somebody that I was a friend who was doing my life coaching training with me, he was a triathlete. And so he, took me under his wing, and off we went and bought all the bike gear. I got all kitted up, all the gear and no idea. And off I went and I trained. And so I spent the year training. I spent the year fundraising. I raised my $10,000. Carol did the same in New Zealand. And a year later, we set off as little intrepid travelers, these two Kiwi birds, on a big plane to Bangkok. And when we got to Bangkok, we met 46 other like-minded souls who were also there for the same reason. They'd raised $10,000 each, and they were ready to be paying it forward and giving back on this crazy bike ride, in 35-degree heat in Thailand. And on that bike ride, my current husband, Dan, happened to be one of the riders. He'd been involved in the charity since its inception in 2009, I think it was. And the rest is history. I moved from Perth to Sydney. We eloped up to one of the orphanages a couple of years later, and we got married with the kids and the staff and the orphanage and the home there that we consider to be, we considered them to be our first children that had brought us together in this organisation. And we went on to Barcelona on our honeymoon, and we had our fourth IVF together as a couple in Barcelona on our honeymoon, and we came home pregnant with our little girl, Zoe.
Oh, gosh. What a fantastic story.
Yeah.
This just warms my heart. And it sounds to me like when you kind of gave up or let go of that need and you opened your heart to whatever else was there. There's so many children who are needing love, so many children needing support in orphanages all over the world.
Yeah.
And the minute that knot in you was released, then everything kind of flowed to bring into the world this beautiful little baby girl you have now.
Yeah, and look, we had our first idea for creating our family was to bring one of the kids home from Thailand with us, at least one, but intra-country adoption is very difficult. The children in the in Home Hug and Ban Home Hug, which is in the far northeast of Thailand, up near the Laos border, probably 85% of them have HIV. So they're considered special needs. Again, that was going to be, almost an insurmountable challenge for us to try and adopt them, to bring them home. And as crazy as it sounds, with us not getting any younger, going down the path of more IVF was the easiest route for us to try and create this family. And I say that tongue in cheek because it is by no means easy. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy because of the, emotional roller coaster and the physical toll it takes on your body as well. And so here we are with our little girl. Thank goodness we did go down that path, and we're blessed with Zoe, who is an absolute amazing, empowered little woman already at 3, nearly 4. And I say, do I have more mothering in me? 100%. If I lived on a big ranch somewhere, I'd have all the stray children and all the stray animals in the world. But do I have another IVF at 47? Probably not. But this may not be the final mothering for me. Who knows what the future holds? It may just take a different shape. And for me, part of that nurturing and that mothering is with my clients. It's with the beautiful people I work with. It's with my niece and nephew in New Zealand. It's my friends and their beautiful children here. So, I scratch that itch in other ways.
I love that. I just want to thank everybody who's tuned in so far. I can see Jocelyn, welcome to the show there in the UK. Roslyn, you are in Brisbane, Australia. We have Rosieto in Mexico who's just joined us. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the show. Now, let's end our interview with you giving advice to somebody out there who's thinking of going through IVF, who has gone through it and it's failed. What nuggets of wisdom can you share based on what has been your journey?
Wow, it's a big question. I think before you even embark on it is to collect a toolkit of, I like to call it a mental first aid toolkit, because I wish that was something that I had before I embarked on it the first time in the beginning. And I really didn't know anybody else going through IVF even when we embarked on it, my ex-husband and I. And I think now looking back and moving more in this space, and I see and have felt and experienced firsthand the immense power and benefits of having the right support network around you, and taking the time to speak to those people, to not feel like you have to speak to everybody about your journey. I say the main things, I guess, if I could nail it down, I say there's 3 things to concentrate on that I perhaps didn't the first time around, and that is your heart. Do more of the things that lift you up.
Yes.
It's hug, it's the support network, and it's a holistic approach to everything. And I don't for a second think that people need to have an equal balance in all areas of their life, because that's impossible these days. But I do think it's important to be able to give some space to each of those things. Clearly I wasn't doing that. Our marriage didn't survive, for various reasons. But I think having a strong sense of who you are and the things that carry you through the tough times before you get there is so powerful. If you have those things already established that you can rely on, whether it's a coffee with a friend that lifts you up, or whether it's walking in the fresh air, it's a cuddle with your dog, whatever it might be, I think having those things already established in your mind so that you can move forward through the difficult times without then having to suddenly create that when the fog is on you. And it's hard to dip into those things. And I think the third thing, so heart and hug and head is the third thing. And I think arm yourself with as much information as you need to. That's where I think in IVF and assisted reproduction and trying to have a baby even naturally, often the hardest part is the uncertainty, and particularly through the IVF process where you give away some of that control. You need to give that control to the doctors because they're the experts in that space, and you can often be left in this space of feeling that there's a lack of control in your life. And so if you can arm yourself with as much information as you can, and you can regain, that's when you become more empowered. You take back some of the power, some of the decisions, and don't be afraid to ask the questions, even when you think they might be silly.
Yes. Oh, wow. Amazing. Absolutely wonderful, wonderful, wonderful conversation here. We're getting so many responses. There's somebody who said, I met you in Bali. I'm not sure if they met you or if they met me. We've got Sasha in New Zealand. And somebody else has just said that this is an amazing story. Thank you.
Thank you
so much. Oh, man, this is what makes me want to wake up every day and do what I do in sharing these stories, because you just never know who is out there listening in, and your story becomes the light at the end of somebody's tunnel.
Absolutely.
Just talking about these things, infertility is not something to be ashamed of. There's no shame. It's just something that happens to some people. It doesn't happen to others. So destigmatizing the feeling that people get when they're in the middle of the situation and being open, you probably find that there's more people around you going through a similar challenge that you don't even know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wisdom.
So many people these days, 1 in 3 pregnancies, whether assisted or natural, end in miscarriage these days. Yes. I think the statistics now are 1 in 7 babies in Australia are born via IVF. And so if you look around your networks, there's people, men and women, going through this. And, it's time that we opened up the conversation a little bit more, because there is so much power in sharing and in shared empathy and understanding. And I think if you haven't been through it, it's often hard to really understand those feelings and emotions that accompany it. And so I think there is power in sharing our stories and hoping, like you said, that, maybe just one person is listening and that helps to give them some comfort.
Wonderful. Miranda, I could talk to you all night. Thank you so much. And thank you again to everybody who tuned in. Thank you for your positive feedback through the chat. Please share this video with anyone you know. And Miranda, how can people get hold of you? What kind of help are you giving women besides the women's circles that you create?
Yeah, beautiful. My website is mirandamurray.com. My email is empowered@mirandamurray.com, and also _Miranda Murray on Instagram if you want to follow me there. Please feel free to reach out if you want to chat, if you want more information. I also offer one-to-one coaching and holistic counselling and the women's circles. Pre the pandemic, I was running some free intergenerational play groups, but they've had to stop to protect our beautiful elderly residents. But yeah, there's a lot of things. There's some more beautiful things I'm bringing into my work. Probably by October. Let's hope we're out of lockdown by then.
Yes.
Of some yoga play groups and, an extension of my women's circles, but for women to be able to bring their bubs along and not have to put them in a creche. So it's ever evolving. It's ever evolving, Gertrude, like you, so many ideas, just one person. I try not to wish away the time that I have with my little girl. Fridays are our day. So I only work part-time 4 days a week still. So, it'll come. Patience. It's interesting. I told you I drew these cards the other day, and one of them I still have in front of me.
Yes.
It says divine patience. And I think that's a good, it's a good reminder for all of us that, there was a beautiful woman here in Sydney at one of the International Women's Days breakfasts that I went to, who said, as women, we can have everything, just maybe not all at once. It's a nice reminder. Our time will come.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Everybody, I will be back again later today with yet another amazing interview subject. Have a fantastic evening wherever you are in the world, or morning, or lunchtime. And thanks again, Miranda. Thank you. Don't go away. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.